February 16th, 1945, the island of Corregidor, Philippines. The air is thick enough to drink, a humid, soupy mixture of sea salt, pulverized concrete, and the sickly sweet smell of death that has become the signature perfume of the Pacific Theater. For the men of the 4th Marine Regiment, this island, known as the Rock, is a fortress turned tomb. It's a labyrinth of shattered batteries and collapsed tunnels, and every shadow seems to spit fire. You are lying with them, your face pressed into a slurry of red mud and splintered rock. The ground shudders, not from grand artillery, but from something more personal, more intimate in its violence. It's the rhythmic, hammering pulse of a Japanese Type 92 heavy machine gun. Thump, thump, thump. A sound the Marines call the woodpecker because of the way it methodically chips away at their cover and their lives. The woodpecker is nestled in a concrete and steel bunker dug into the western face of Malinta Hill. It's a speck, a smudge of gray against a backdrop of more gray. The distance is obscene. 800 meters, nearly half a mile of open, shell-pocked ground that the Japanese have turned into a kill zone. Every time a Marine so much as shifts his weight, the woodpecker answers, stitching lines of 7.7 millimeter depth across their position. The company is pinned down, paralyzed. Their own weapons are useless. The M1 Garands, magnificent rifles for a 300-meter fight, can't touch a target that far with any precision. The Browning automatic rifles are spitting into the wind. They've called for mortars, but the bunker's aperture is too small, its overhead cover too thick. Trying to drop a round into that tiny slot from above is like trying to thread a needle in a hurricane. They tried. They failed. Now the mortar crews are just as pinned as the riflemen. A young lieutenant, his face pale beneath a layer of grime, crawls over to his platoon sergeant. His voice is a strained whisper, barely audible over the crack of incoming fire. "We can't stay here. We're being chewed to pieces. I'm calling it. We're pulling back." Retreat. The word hangs in the air, heavier than the humidity. Pulling back means leaving the wounded who can't move. It means surrendering this ground they've already paid for in blood. It means the woodpecker wins. For the men huddled behind shattered stones and fallen trees, it feels like a death sentence. But one man isn't listening to the lieutenant. He isn't looking at the wounded. He isn't even looking at the enemy. He's looking at his own hands, then back toward the distant bunker, his eyes narrowed in a way that isn't anger, but calculation. This is Gunnery Sergeant Leland Lou Diamond. He's older than most of the Marines around him, his face a roadmap of hard campaigns and harder living. He doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. His reputation precedes him. They call him the Master of the Mortar, a man who can perform mathematical miracles with an M2 mortar tube. But today, the mortars are silent. While the others brace for the inevitable order to fall back, Diamond remains unnaturally still. The battle seems to fade into a dull roar around him. He sees the problem not as a tactical impasse, but a question of physics. A geometry puzzle where the prize for solving it is survival. His gaze drifts from the bunker to the junk littering the battlefield. Shredded bits of metal, splintered crates, the detritus of war. Slowly, deliberately, he reaches into his pack. The men nearby watch him, expecting maybe a grenade, a flare, some last desperate tool. Instead, he pulls out a pair of beat-up iron pliers. He doesn't say a word. He just holds them, his knuckles white. He looks again at the distant bunker, then at a frayed piece of communications wire half buried in the mud near his foxhole. A strange, quiet intensity settles over him, a focus so complete it seems to bend the chaos of the battlefield around him. The other Marines exchange confused glances. The lieutenant is about to order the retreat, and Gunnery Sergeant Diamond is about to try something insane.
A corporal, a kid from Ohio, barely 19 years old, nudges the man next to him. "What the hell is Gunny doing?" he mutters, his voice tight with fear. The woodpecker opens up again, and they press themselves so flat against the earth they feel they might merge with it. The bullets snap overhead like angry whips. When the burst stops, they look back at Lou Diamond. He's on his knees, In the middle of a firefight that has frozen an entire company, he is methodically, almost serenely, digging at the frayed communications wire with the tip of his K-bar knife. He frees a length of it, maybe a foot long, coated in mud. Then he takes his pliers. The other Marines watch in a state of suspended disbelief. Is he trying to fix a radio? Has the heat and horror of Corregidor finally cracked him? The lieutenant is crawling toward him now, his face a mask of frantic confusion. "Gunny, what in God's name are you doing? We're pulling back." Diamond doesn't even look up. "Not yet, Lieutenant," he says, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. It isn't insubordinate, it's a statement of fact, as if he's merely correcting a miscalculation in a firing solution. He continues to work the wire with his pliers, bending it, twisting it. The metal groans in protest. He isn't just making a random shape, he's crafting something, a small, precise loop, about the size of a quarter, at one end of the wire. He holds it up to his eye, checks the symmetry, and makes a minute adjustment. He wraps the other end of the wire tightly around the barrel of his rifle, a Springfield M1903. This is his personal weapon, an older, bolt-action rifle he prefers over the standard-issue M1 Garand for its legendary accuracy. But even the Springfield is only issued with iron sights, a simple front blade and a rear notch adjustable for elevation. Those sights top out around 2,800 feet yards on paper, but in practice, hitting a man-sized target past 600 meters is a job for a trained sniper with high-powered optics. Hitting a tiny bunker aperture at 800 is a job for artillery. Now this legendary rifle looks ridiculous. A piece of dirty wire is twisted around its barrel, with a clumsy-looking loop sticking up like some kind of crude joke. "What is that?" the corporal asks, his voice a mix of awe and scorn. "Some kind of stupid wire trick?" Another Marine laughs, a short, sharp bark of frayed nerves. He's lost it. Gunny's finally lost it. The lieutenant stares at the contraption. "Diamond, I am giving a direct order to prepare to withdraw. What is this?" Diamond finally looks at him. His eyes are clear, steady, and utterly devoid of panic. "It's a sight, sir, for the drop." The drop? He's talking about bullet drop, the arc of a projectile under the pull of gravity. Over 800 meters, the .30-06 round from his Springfield will fall more than 25 feet. To compensate, you have to aim ridiculously high. But if you aim that high, your target disappears completely beneath your rifle's front sight. You're aiming at the sky. You're guessing. What Diamond has built, in the middle of a slaughter, is a makeshift ballistic calculator. The wire loop is a new rear sight, a massive ghost ring. By raising his rear point of aim several inches higher than the rifle's built-in sight, he can elevate the barrel to an extreme angle. If he can manage to center the rifle's original front sight post inside this new, crude wire loop, and then place that entire sight picture on the distant target, he might, just might, be able to send a bullet on the massive, rainbow-shaped trajectory required to meet that bunker. It is, on its face, impossible. It requires him to account for wind, for the specific performance of his ammunition, for the angle of the shot, all with a piece of scrap metal. It's the kind of marksmanship that doesn't exist outside of tall tales. He ignores the stares. He ignores the lieutenant, who is now too stunned to speak. He settles into a prone position, pushing a small rock under the forestock of his rifle for stability. He works the bolt, chambering a single round. The oiled metal slides home with a satisfying final click. The woodpecker opens up again, sensing movement. A stream of tracers screams past, close enough for Diamond to feel the heat. A spray of dirt and rock chips kicks up just inches from his face. He doesn't flinch. He just takes a slow, steady breath, his eye finding the wire loop. He begins to tighten his finger on the trigger. The order ripples out through the chain of command, a strange mix of disbelief and desperation. A gunner, a grizzled sergeant named Frank Kelly, crawls over, his face a mask of skepticism. "Captain, you for real?" Miller just points at Jackson. "He's in charge of the gun, Sergeant. Do what he says." Kelly looks at Jackson, then at the ridiculous piece of wire in his hand, and shakes his head. But an order is an order.
A loader, a private, barely out of his teens, follows, his eyes wide as he drags a 57mm high-explosive round behind him. Jackson is no longer just a corporal, he is the director of this small, desperate stage play. "Sergeant," he says, his voice losing none of its calm authority, "I need you to set the tripod right here. Dig the trail spade in deep. Deeper." He gestures to a spot in the sand. He isn't just placing the weapon, he's creating a foundation. He knows the M18 is a recoilless rifle, but that name is a lie. It still bucks, and at the extreme angle he plans to use, any instability will throw the shot off by 100 yards. He has the loader pour water from his canteen onto the sand around the tripod legs, making a thick mud to pack them in place, turning the shifting beach into a solid firing platform. As they work, the absurdity of the situation becomes clear. To hit a target 800 meters away with this weapon, the shell needs to be thrown into the air like a mortar round. It needs to fly in a high parabolic arc. Jackson directs Sergeant Kelly to elevate the barrel. "More," Jackson says quietly. "More." Kelly cranks the elevation wheel, his eyes on the spirit level. The barrel tilts up, past 10 degrees, past 20. "Corporal, this is crazy," Kelly mutters. "We're aiming at the sky." Jackson doesn't answer. He walks to the side of the weapon and, using more wire, carefully fastens his crude bent wire contraption to the barrel. It sits several inches above the weapon's actual sight, an angular, ugly appendage. You have to understand the mathematics of what he's attempting. The standard sight on the M18 is a simple telescope designed for you to put the crosshairs on a target you can see and pull the trigger. It accounts for a little bit of bullet drop over a few hundred meters. Jackson is calculating a trajectory that is almost entirely drop. He has to aim at a point in the empty blue sky, a point that his mind has calculated will allow the shell, after 8 or 9 seconds of flight, to fall directly onto the target. He has to account for the crosswind blowing in from the sea, a wind he can feel on his cheek and see in the drift of the smoke on the beach. He's doing the work of an artillery fire direction center, a team of men with maps, charts, and slide rules, all inside his head. He steps behind the weapon. The Japanese gun, as if sensing a new threat, fires again. A shell impacts 50 yards away, showering their position with sand and hot shrapnel. The young loader cries out, clutching his arm where a small piece of metal has torn through his sleeve. "Jackson, now!" Captain Miller yells, his voice raw with urgency. "Take the shot!" Jackson ignores him. He puts his eye to the small loop he fashioned at the end of his wire sight. He squints, lining up the upright post at the other end with a specific cloud formation on the horizon. He's not looking at the bunker. He's looking at his imaginary aiming point in the sky. He makes a final, minute adjustment to the gun's traverse, tapping the tripod leg with the toe of his boot. He breathes out, slow and steady. The world shrinks to the space between his eye and that piece of wire. He turns his head slightly, his gaze still fixed on his aiming point. "Sergeant," he says to Kelly, his voice now a soft whisper carried on the wind. "Fire on my mark." A profound silence seems to settle over their small patch of beach. Every man around them holds his breath, waiting.
For a full 5 seconds, no one moves. No one speaks. The only sound is the wind and the distant, unrelated popping of rifles from another sector. The Marines lying in the mud stare at the column of smoke rising from the bunker, then their heads turn, almost as one, toward Gunnery Sergeant Lou Diamond. He has already worked the bolt on his Springfield, ejecting the spent casing and chambering a fresh round. His movements are fluid, economical, and utterly calm, as if he had just been conducting routine target practice. He squints at the bunker, watching the smoke pour out, then slowly lowers the rifle. He gives a single, terse nod, more to himself than to anyone else. Job done. The spell breaks. The corporal from Ohio lets out a long, shaky breath that turns into a whoop of pure, unadulterated joy. He did it! Holy mother! He did it! The lieutenant is on his field glasses, his hands trembling slightly. I see it, but I don't believe it," he whispers into his radio handset. "The gun is gone. The whole inside of the bunker aperture is wrecked, blackened." The realization washes over the company like a physical wave. The pressure is gone. The invisible wall of bullets that had held them pinned, that had been bleeding them dry, has vanished. A cheer goes up, a ragged, raw sound of relief and triumph. Men who were hugging the dirt moments before are now sitting up, clapping each other on the shoulder, staring at Diamond with a reverence usually reserved for saints or madmen. The 1-in-a-million shot wasn't just a hit on the gunner. It couldn't have been. A single bullet wouldn't create that kind of secondary explosion. Diamond's round, guided by a bent wire and a master's instinct, must have screamed through that narrow opening and struck something volatile inside. An open box of machine gun ammunition, perhaps? A grenade? It didn't just kill the crew, it detonated the hornet's nest. The tactical shift is instantaneous. With the woodpecker silenced, the battle for this piece of corregidor is transformed. "Let's go! Move up! Pour it on 'em!" The lieutenant's voice is no longer strained and panicked, but hard and commanding. NCOs are shouting, organizing fire teams. The Marines rise from their positions, a wave of olive drab and steel, and begin to advance across the killing ground that is no longer killing them. The air, once filled with the terror of the Type 92, is now filled with the confident crack of American M1s and the chatter of BARs as they begin to suppress other lesser enemy positions. One shot, one man. The momentum of the entire engagement has been reversed. The retreat is forgotten. The attack is on. The story begins to travel almost before the smoke has cleared from the bunker. It moves down the line, passed in hushed, awe-filled tones from one foxhole to the next. By nightfall, runners will have carried it to company headquarters. By the next day, it will be a legend whispered throughout the regiment. The story of Gunny Diamond and his stupid wire trick. It's a piece of battlefield folklore in the making, a testament to the kind of absurd ingenuity that can only be born in the crucible of total desperation. Amidst the renewed chaos of the assault, a young Marine crawls over to Diamond, who is calmly cleaning the barrel of his Springfield. The kid's eyes are wide. "Gunny," he says, his voice cracking with emotion. How did you do that?" Diamond pauses his work. He looks up from his rifle, his expression unreadable. He glances at the wire still wrapped around the barrel, then back at the distant smoking ruin. He gives a slight shrug. "Had to be done," he says. Then he goes back to cleaning his rifle. The battle was not over. Malinta Hill still had to be taken. And there were other puzzles on this island that would need to be solved.
Lou Diamond's shot was more than just an incredible feat of marksmanship. It was an embodiment of the brutal, intimate nature of the Pacific War. Unlike the vast, mechanized fronts of Europe, the fight against Japan was often a series of desperate, small-unit actions on God-forsaken islands. It was a war fought in caves, in jungles, and in shattered fortresses, where progress was measured in yards, not miles. In this environment, victory didn't always belong to the side with the most tanks or the biggest bombs. It often belonged to the side with the most determined, adaptable, and resourceful individuals. Men like Gunnery Sergeant Lou Diamond were the ghost in the machine. He was already a legend for his work with the 60mm mortar, earning the nickname the Master of the Mortar for his uncanny ability to drop shells with surgical precision, often without the aid of standard sighting equipment. He trusted his gut, his experience, and his savant-like understanding of physics. The wire trick wasn't a fluke. It was the logical extension of a mind that saw the battlefield as a set of problems to be solved, not just a storm to be endured. He was the living, breathing expression of the Marine Corps ethos: improvise, adapt, overcome. So how did it actually work? The science behind the stupid wire trick is a beautiful example of battlefield engineering. The wire loop served as a primitive but effective aperture sight, often called a ghost ring. When you look through a small rear aperture, your eye naturally centers the front sight post within it. Diamond's loop was massive, which made it faster to use and allowed him to see more of the battlefield. Its primary function, however, was to solve the problem of elevation. By fixing the loop so high above the barrel, he created a new, drastically elevated sight plane. Standard rifle sights are designed to be close to the barrel to create a flat trajectory for common combat ranges.
Diamond's sight was designed for the exact opposite, to create a consistent, repeatable angle of departure for a bullet that needed to travel in a massive arc, like a thrown football. He turned his direct-fire rifle into a miniature piece of artillery. It was a crude ballistic computer fashioned from trash. Modern snipers use laser rangefinders, sophisticated scopes with miliradian adjustments, and smartphone apps to make the same calculation. Lou Diamond did it with a pair of pliers and a glance at the wind. His actions on Corregidor saved countless lives that day. By neutralizing the key defensive position, he broke the stalemate and allowed the 4th Marines to advance and ultimately secure their objective. It was a single, pivotal moment that prevented a costly retreat and likely saved his company from being cut to pieces. Yet for this specific act of genius, there would be no Medal of Honor, no official citation detailing the mechanics of his invention. It was an unofficial solution to an unofficial problem, a piece of battlefield brilliance that would live on not in military manuals, but in the collective memory of the men who saw it. In the end, the story of Lou Diamond and his wire trick is a powerful reminder that warfare is and always will be a human endeavor. Technology, training, and tactics are crucial, but they are nothing without the spark of human ingenuity. It's a testament to the lone individual who, faced with impossible odds, refuses to accept defeat, who looks at a piece of junk wire and sees not trash, but a key, who understands that the most powerful weapon on any battlefield is not the rifle in a Marine's hands, but the mind of the Marine holding it. The stupid wire trick worked because it wasn't stupid at all. It was the desperate, brilliant, and beautiful logic of survival.